Peter has become sort of the object of the season rather than the subject of the season, because this whole storyline building up has been about Walter's great sin, and Walter's great sin is Peter. But Peter's completely unaware and has very little to do with it over the course of all this. It's sort of things happening around him.
I think as a metaphor, we were sort of playing family secrets. This show is really about these three characters who form this little family unit by being pulled together, and that at the core of their relationship was this devastating secret.
Astrid finds out in a really emotional way because Walter lets it slip to her accidentally. I think that it was really nice for them to invite Astrid into the importance of that instead of keeping her in the dark. At least she knows that she's a part of this family and this affects her. I think she serves as a really important character in these later episodes because Astrid is kind of the only person that isn't directly involved with everything, that's kind of, still on his side. She has to step up to the plate and be that comfort for him, because if he doesn't have anyone there, he's basically gonna regress and go back to the place, I think, mentally that he was in when he was in the mental institution. Of course, we don't want that.
Astrid, could you give Walter and I a minute?
Sure. Walter, don't mix up the spoons.
We knew that it would be in the back third of the season that we would really acknowledge for Olivia that Peter came from the other side. The worst circumstance that could happen in is at a moment when they're getting as close together as possible.
I'm scared.
Don't be.
That puts her into a reflexively uncomfortable place, and that triggers the ability that was implanted in her by Walter and William when she was a little girl, which unfortunately makes her aware of the big secret. I'll go get my coat.
So she realizes that Peter is in fact from the other side because he glimmers like the buildings glimmer. And then she realizes that Walter obviously took him.
Please don't tell him.
Finding strength in vulnerability is not something that she had been capable of, and she's very good at pushing things off and keeping things at a distance. Her wardrobe is all the same color, everything is muted in her life. She protects herself, and the whole concept of her feeling something that she's never felt before, whether it's on an emotional relationship level or on a fear level, that was the key to that whole episode, and her learning a little about herself.
We think as people, you often have a goal, you have an outcome, but it occurs in an unexpected way, and those are sort of the moments of magic. Those are the really meaningful moments, and that's what we were shooting for.
The next episode, Walter comes to visit Olivia. Olivia hasn't been answering her phone. She hasn't had any communication while she's been trying to work out what to do. And then Walter tells her this full-on Walter taking Peter story.
The episode Peter was a challenge because we had to tell the story that people kind of suspected. Hardcore fans, you kind of knew what the story was by the time you watched it. So it presented a whole host of challenges that, how can we give you more? How could we make the decision-making process on Walter so compelling that even though you kind of know that he went over to the other side to take Peter, or you suspected, that when you actually see it, you're moved. So we instantly recognize that, it's not that we're interested in really showing people new information plot-wise, but that we can actually try and put them in the mind frame of a parent who has lost their son and would go across with the best intentions.
To save Peter's life, alternate Peter's life, he brought him back, always intending to send him back. But then his wife, Elizabeth, saw this child, and it became emotionally impossible. You should see the look on Uncle Brady's face when she sees the boy again. It's gold, How could you take this back? So he's caught then, emotionally caught, even though you should have taken him back. And that's the whole premise that Fringe is based on.
It seems like that was the inciting incident that brought the pattern into being and set this confrontation on its inevitable path.
Jeff kept saying, what are the things that people don't know? There are all the things we've said in the series about the Observer saving Walter and Peter, and there are certain things that people know happened that night, but what are the things we don't know? And so the fun for us was really coming up with, what was the relationship between Belle and Walter then? And, Belle not coming to the funeral, and how did that work?
You know how much William wanted to be here. He wanted me to make sure that you know how terrible he feels.
When the real Peter died.
I'm glad you came.
And Nina was hip to the fact that Walter was going to try and go get him. Nina did everything she could to stop him, and that, of course, is, in fact, how she lost her arm. We knew in the pilot when Nina says, I had cancer, and again, this year I said to Olivia, I can get you some help because I had cancer. It never had the ring of truth, which is why Belle made sure she had a functioning arm. And, again, it's the way the secrets are all held. Everybody has a reason to keep quiet.
Grief can drive people to extraordinary lengths.
The big reveals and things like that, the writers, they don't tell us too much of that. But so far as the character development goes, at a certain point the actors become the caretakers of their characters. And each one of us, I'm sure, would tell you that we put a lot into the backstories and think about what would have gone into getting this person to this place in their life. And there is a back and forth with the writers about that, much more so than the big mythological pieces of the show, about making these characters consistent so that when they grow, it's real growth, the interactions remain honest. Because if the characters at the center of the show are honest and interesting, then I think people will go along any journey with them.
Hey, we need to get on that bridge.
How does Walter tell Peter? Every time he tries, he can't because he's scared of the consequences, but it's forced upon him. There's a man on the other side who is alternate, and Peter on his side who don't get damaged. Other people do. There's an FBI agent who gets disintegrated by these shutters. But Peter puts two and two together and says, hang on, that guy didn't, and I didn't. Oh my goodness.
When this event happens, as he has to go through all the relations in his head, he realizes that Walter has obviously been lying to him since he was a child. His mother, who he loved, has been lying to him and is now dead. And I think he realizes that Olivia has been lying to him.
Welcome back.
I would imagine that he feels completely taken by his father. He spent his entire lifetime hating this man, finally gave in to feeling like a son to this father, and then it turned out he was right. He should have hated this man. He was kidnapped.
I'm not from here, am I? Son, I am not your son.
How could you ever forgive those people enough to, go get Walter a sandwich in the lab, right? So this is the interesting thing going forward, because now Peter doesn't fit here anymore. He can't be a part of this world anymore, which puts us in a strange place.
Peter.
We love alternate realities. I think everybody involved with the show is pretty excited by that prospect, and now we get an opportunity to explore them in a little more detail.
I don't mean to sound so cliche, but it's epic. There's something Greek or Shakespearean about it, where it operates on so many levels, because it's such a character-driven piece in so many ways. It's so about the relationships, not just on an individual scale. We're talking about universes and life and death.
Hey, freeze! I said freeze!
If you're familiar with the story of the Iliad, that's sort of what the mythology is in the second season of Fringe. Someone stolen from their country, or in this case, their alternate universe, taken to another one. In this case, it's Peter, who is essentially Helen of Troy, and his real father on the other side, in the other universe, coming to get him. And so it sets off the whole Trojan War, the face that launched 1,000 ships.
Hello, son.
The finale turned out like a movie. It's a movie that you couldn't watch without sort of being up to speed going into it, but in and of itself, the finale turned out great. And the secret is not only going to see the alternate universe and finally get a look at it, but just the scale of going to New York and seeing how things are different.
Am I responsible for this?
Yes, Walter. I'm afraid you are.
What happens if you break the rules of nature? Well, we know this on an environmental level all the time. And experimentation can go wrong, Chernobyl blowing up was science went wrong. And as a result, generations of people from around there either died or will die or have left deformities. That's science. That's what happens. So Walter, he has to live with some of the things he's done. He doesn't know a great deal about the other side, to be truthful. He went to the other side, but he wasn't exposed to the culture at all. When he comes back this time, it will be new to him, as it is new to everybody. But he'll be prepared because he knows enough about the difference in technology and advancements to not be surprised by things.
We've fallen in love with the notion of some things are better there, some things are worse. It's just choices. Every time somebody makes a choice, the paths diverge a little bit. Things like Zeppelins and double-decker cars.
Richard Nixon on a silver dollar.
A lot of it became fun.
People love the concept of the parallel universe because I don't think that there's anybody that regrets nothing. Like, I think that everybody says, wow, if there's something I could change, maybe I would. It's very topical. I think there's a decline in a lot of things like religion and organized politics and things like this. People just have lost faith. You wonder, maybe there is something out there that I don't know, and I can have faith in the unknown, and that's sort of bringing people closer to our show. I mean, a lot of people have mentioned that to me, saying, like, oh, do you believe it? Do you think that that's possible?
Hey, Mark.
Go, Mark.
And background and action.
Jeff and Joel had the idea that we got to go back to the Cortex-fan kids. Like, there's something really interesting about the ones we've seen, the ones we know are out there. You know, the girl with the pyrokinesis, James Heath, who gives cancer, and then the other fellow, Nick Lane, who can control people's emotions with his mind. It really felt like, oh, this is a really beautiful culmination of everything. And now we get to do our fun, which is go to the alternate universe with 3 other Cortex-fan kids and spend some time over there.
James, look, what did we do?
Look. Anomalous energy signature detected.
Okay, people, nap time's over. Let's go to work.
Broyles on the other side, Olivia on the other side, Charlie on the other side, who died on this side. See, and then, of course, who's faced with the dilemma is Peter. Which side does he side with? This is one of the great dilemmas here. Does he side with his father's side, where he's lived all his life, or does he side with the other side? So he becomes torn man in the middle.
We're always building throughout the season towards this confrontation when Peter meets his real father.
Mr. Secretary?
There's great irony at work with the fact that Walternate has sort of become this terrible person because of exactly what Walter did, taking Peter away from him.
The big difference is that he's had 25 years to stew on the fact that someone stole his child, and he's going to make the people who did it pay.
There are doubles. Alternate versions of ourselves, but don't be deceived, Olivia. They're monsters in our skin. They'll do anything, say anything to gain our trust, but they can't be trusted.
We've been doing this for nearly 2 years or 2 seasons, so it's sort of, you're in such a rhythm with your relationships and your people that to be looking at the same person but playing a different thing is kind of quite, if it was a completely separate thing it would be fine, but you know, how different can they be, and I'm finding it difficult to track. We don't have copious amounts of time to prepare. You just go. So I'm finding my feet now. I'll tell you next time how I think it went.
Hello, Olivia. It's good to see you again. Walter is in trouble, and I'm quite confident we don't have much time.
The Bell action, the Bell-Walter stuff, you've never seen these 2 guys together. This is McCartney and Lennon, the reunion.
Hello, William.
Walter?
I see you've aged.
It appears I'm not the only one.
What happens when McCartney and Lennon get back together? And, you know, we have the scene where they're bickering, and then another scene where they're bickering, and then we have the scene where they come up with a solution that helps them get back, where it's like, oh, you get to see Lennon and McCartney write a song again, and see how brilliant they still can be.
All through this process, there has been a question about what William Bell's intentions really are. I called a friend to wish him a happy birthday the other day, and he said, you must tell me, are you good or are you evil? I said, I can't do that. I can't. I'm sworn to secrecy. But that's the fun of the show.
Walter, you asked me why I took out part of your brain. I did it because you asked me to.
Cut! That's the one. That's really lovely. You know, what we get finally is real moments of confrontation and resolution between William and Walter. They have a tremendous amount of history. They've been responsible for tremendous boons and tremendous losses in each other's lives. And so when you have actors like John Noble and, you know, the wonderful Leonard Nimoy, we've had a really great opportunity to create some really fun drama that's also very inside. You know, they're wonderful actors, and so anybody coming in could watch it and be moved by the emotions of the scene, but they're also so deeply embedded in our mythology that it's a kind of love letter, I think, to the fans of the show.
How are we going to make a finale where there's a twist that blows away the World Trade Center for last year? We were at a point where we were like, okay, so Peter and Walter get home safe, but Olivia's stuck in the other universe. And that was the initial, like, oh, that'll be the end. And we sort of were noodling on that, and we're like, okay, that's good. Well, what if there's a switch? What if basically Olivia gets stuck in the alternate universe, and Olivia from over there winds up over here as a secret agent? That's really cool. And that gives us tons of story to play with. We now have this infiltrator who we don't know is an infiltrator. And how much fun are we going to have with that for the first 5-10 episodes of season 3? And meanwhile, you've got Olivia stuck in the other universe and watching her like a hawk. How much fun are we going to have with that?
Get me out of here.
The
The idea of these two factions, and by factions I mean two separate planes of existence, not only aware of each other, but actually intertwined and in some ways on an inevitable collision course, was one of the original ideas of the show. And so as this will play out, there will be a continued and I think growing threat that involves these two universes.
The answers had been promised, and I think we've delivered some. I think we've closed out some mysteries and opened up a new set of them, and I hope that's exciting to people.